broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
What's up, AfterBuzzers? Welcome back. Tonight we are covering The Family Season 1, Episode 3 of Puppies and Monsters.
Yeah.
Way to go with the creepy title.
Great
The Family.
title. Appropriately titled.
Yeah, exactly.
Very appropriate.
So, I was going to say everything else is creepy in the show, so why should that not be? I'm your host, April Whisenhant. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere at April Whisenhant. You can find us all, of course, at AfterBuzz TV. Make sure to download on iTunes, rate us, review. We want to know what you think. Tweet us all throughout the show because we want to hear all the creepy stuff that y'all thought. Where can they find you?
Yes. Hi, I'm Abby Vega. You can find me on Instagram _Abby Vega and on Twitter at AVega5.
Awesome. And I'm Nadine Della Pelle, and you can find me all over at Nadine DP and the number 3.
So tonight, a little bit of a slower kind of episode, did y'all think?
Yeah.
Than the first two.
But I feel like you learn a lot.
Oh yeah, we got a lot of information. What's your kind of general thoughts about tonight?
Yeah, I was gonna say that same type of feel. It wasn't as intense, as crazy as we saw it, but I think they had to initially, those first 2 episodes, just right off the gate, get everyone hooked and attached. And now it's just continuing to build on the plot. I mean, we still had a few twists in there, we still had a few weird, crazy things, but it wasn't to the extent of the first 2 episodes. But I still loved it. So great.
I also
show.
have so many new theories now after just that episode. I think I have an idea. I probably don't actually know, but I'm thinking something different than I did last week.
Yeah.
So.
I don't even know what to say about this episode because it just, to me, like certain things happened that I'm kind of like, huh? Or like, it's like so much has to tie into the other I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but a lot of stuff has to tie into one another for it to make sense.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just confused. But I'm glad, I like the way that the episode started off, actually. It started off, very first scene with Adam asking his dad, why didn't you continue to look for me? And that was actually one of my biggest kind of questions is because, well, like, obviously they thought that Hank did it, and that's why. But for a long time before that, they had just kind of stopped looking. And so I was glad that they showed Adam asking him, why did you stop looking for me?
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those things, though, where, I mean, statistics and stuff of how many, after a certain number of days or a certain number of years, how many children are actually returned home. And I think you get to a point where you lose hope in a sense. Yeah. And I mean, 10 years, I mean, the fact that he actually came home, that's crazy. So I don't fault them for kind of halting the process because you had someone that said that they killed him.
Right.
And then what else are you supposed to do? Okay, you have to take that for what it is.
Yeah, I don't fault them at all either. Because I feel like having that burden on you, you eventually just have to start moving on.
Exactly.
Regardless if someone didn't admit to, you're always going to have that hope and want that to happen, but at a certain point you can't let it take over your life.
Exactly.
You got to move on.
Very true. I think we learned the most things tonight from the flashbacks that we got. Another one of the very first scenes is a flashback, I guess right after Adam was taken, and it's the dad. Oh my, John. I'm like the dad.
The dad.
I almost called him Mr. Warren for a second, but it's John.
We're on a friendly level with John.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Mr. Warren.
I love John. He's like, rushing to the sink, splashing water on his face, and then Willow walks up and is like, did you do it? And
so creepy.
To me, I'm like, what in the world does this mean? Because, I mean, a lot of questions are kind of being thrown out tonight, or throughout the episode anyway, as far as like, who had some sort of involvement. We meet a new character tonight. We call him FBI guy.
FBI guy.
And he is kind of assisting Nadine.
He's helping
Nina.
Nina.
Detective Nina. I swear I'll get it together. With the investigation now, because she hasn't been taken off of it, but they're now the head of it. And he, at one point, even says to her, he's like, I get why you looked at the sex offender down the street, and I get why that he was your first look, but typically child murders happen within the family. They're not random. And so that's where kind of all of these flashbacks of John and Willa start kind of coming together. And it's like, it seems like it doesn't seem like, they were definitely trying to put in your mind like, oh, could John have something to do with it? But I'm glad that they completely did away with that tonight.
Yeah, I feel like they were definitely trying to make you think that he did it. But as it goes on, obviously you learn that it was just about the phone call.
Right.
But I, for a second, was like, did he? And then I'm like, no, that's way too easy.
Yeah.
I think that's the question of this entire show is, did he, didn't he?
Right.
Oh, okay, we got our answer. Oh, but no, now the answer can switch. So I feel like it's I don't know. Maybe he did have a different type of involvement with it. Who knows?
In regards to that, too, sorry.
No, yeah.
The way that they set that up, it kind of shows that, like, why the marriage started to fail, because at a certain point, Claire even thought, did John do this, you know?
Right.
And that kind of shows the beginning of the downfall of the marriage.
Right. Well, we see where, I forget who it is that's asking Claire this at the time, or she's just being questioned by the police, and they say, do you know where your husband was this entire time at the rally? And she's like, oh yeah, he was by my side. And they're like, you sure he was the entire time? Because apparently they got him on camera leaving for like an hour or something like that. And so that kind of gets her mind working, and which is the place she does not need to go, because clearly it's going to cause a lot of other problems.
Yeah. And I think it's in character of John that he left, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Too.
Like, he doesn't like the campaign ever. Like, you can clearly sense that. So, of course, 10 years ago, he's not going to like it. He wants to watch the basketball game.
Right.
So when she brings it up to him and she's basically like, where were you? You're lying. It doesn't sound like a real story. It's like, well, honey, don't you know your husband? I feel like I know your husband. Like, I feel like that sounds like something he would do. So.
Well, even when he said, like, I was gone to get flyers and then I turned on the game. Okay, even if it's not something that's going to necessarily hold up in court, like, there's no way to prove that. That's your husband. Like, shouldn't you take his word for it, unless you just had this sneaking suspicion of him being a murderer the entire time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a stretch, obviously, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just thought the way he was like, okay, this is my explanation. This is what happened. And the fact that she was like, well, that sounds like a made-up story. Like, that's not where your mind should go in that situation.
Yeah, because I understand, a mom in that situation. Obviously, any little doubts about anyone, it's gonna drive your mind wild.
Sure.
But I think that even shows that there was major problems with the marriage before this happened, because, like you said, that shouldn't be your first thought when, like, you don't want I'm like, cannot speak.
I know,
but you know,
I'm there with you.
don't want to. You wouldn't if you would listen to your husband, you would trust him. That'd be the end of it.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, well, the whole thing of what came of this was Willa listening outside the room when they were arguing and they were fighting, and just Willa being Willa, thinking that she needs to fix the family. And, you know, I mean, I get it. I think it's a good trait to have, that she wants her family to, you know, be safe and, like, be intact, et cetera, but to go plant evidence as a 13-year-old, it's just, I mean, it's nice to know that that's why she did it, was to protect her father, because she was afraid her father was going to go to jail. But at the same time, now, 10 years later, she's just messing everything up again.
Exactly. Well, that's the whole basis of the flashback, is we learn that, well, I think we learned last week that Willa did indeed plant the evidence of the little ship in a bottle at Hank's house. But I liked that we found, because we're like, how did no one see her in Hank? How did he not see her?
We were arguing about that.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And so we learned tonight that as soon as she walked in the door, John said, why were you at Hank Asher's house?
Yeah.
And so she kind of approaches it in the sense like, we know who did it and we know that it wasn't you, so let's do something about it, because we know that they can't get into Hank's house at this point without a warrant. So it all kind of comes to fruition at the end, but he basically, we know that John, or this 911 call happened that said, we hear screaming coming from the Asher house, blah, 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 blah. We now know that it was John because he knew that his daughter planted the ship, and that was the way that they gave the cops to get in without a warrant.
Yeah, I think it's crazy that you're literally conspiring with a 13-year-old, like, as a parent, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, at desperate times in a traumatic situation, I'm sure it's just going to make you not think rationally. But I'm very happy, and it made me like the show more, the fact that someone did see her, that he did see her go inside, because that was so unrealistic last week to me.
Yeah.
I remember I got very heated about it. I was like, it doesn't make any sense right now. She can't just do that. So I'm very happy that we were able to see that part. But it just also shows John, I don't know, it was just a little sketchy, though, that he actually went along with it for me. It was just a little too sketchy that he went and did that.
It's pretty sketchy, but at the same, I do get it in the sense of, just like you said, desperate times call for desperate measures. Like, if you truly think this man did this thing, then, and it seems like there's no way around it. I mean, I can't say that I wouldn't do the same thing. Now, and especially after I found out that my 13-year-old daughter just planted evidence in this man's house. Like, am I going to turn my daughter in and say she planted this evidence when ultimately it's going to help me get to the goal that I'm at? But I also, at the same time, or like us as viewers anyway, we have to see it as like, don't you want some concrete something that says this is definitely the person? Like, just because you have these sneaking suspicions and you really, really think that it's him, clearly doesn't mean that it is. And so, I don't know, it just seems like you would try maybe something a little harder to prove, like, this is who definitely had my son. Otherwise, I feel like there would always be doubts in their mind.
Yeah, and I was thinking, too, it didn't seem like it this episode too much, but if he's now feeling super guilty, thinking, okay, we could have found him so long ago if I didn't do this.
Exactly.
You know, because, last week we kind of blame that on Nina because she went after this wrong guy. But you see her in her confrontation with John, she's like, I'll always take the fall for this, but I'm doing that because of you doing this.
Exactly.
So I'm wondering if they're going to explore that more with the character of John and see him being a little more guilty about it. Because to me, he didn't seem super guilty.
Right.
He kind of just tried to justify why he did it. But nothing really about, oh my gosh, if I didn't do this, we could have found him way earlier. So
that was actually one of my favorite scenes from tonight, the confrontation scene with Nina and John, where she, I guess, called him into the station and straight up plays the 911 call.
Doesn't even
for
say
him.
anything. Just hits that play button. It's like, I know, honey. I know.
But I'm like, she didn't listen to that before?
I know,
What?
that's it, yeah.
But I like that she kind of called him out and that she's like, I mean, you're the one, I get why you did this, but you're the one, you're the reason why this man is in jail because of you faking this evidence, basically. And I like that she was that she stood up for herself and wasn't just like, because clearly she's dealing with this in a not so great way because, I mean, she kept the wrong man, and then maybe Adam was in a hole for 10 years or a bunker, whatever they're calling it. So, I don't know. I liked that scene because I'm glad she confronted him about it.
Oh, yeah.
And 100%.
And I think also it's like, I thought for a second that she may turn him in, you know?
Yeah.
Because you're planning evidence, you're conspiring. Like, he could go to prison for a long time, but I mean, luckily they're like in love with each other and stuff. So, you know, he's gonna get off. But I think a great line is she says, she goes, I thought what I was doing was right, and you knew what you were doing was wrong, and that's the difference. And then she just ends that with, get out of my sight. And I was like, get it, girl.
Go, Nina.
That's one of those things, too, when the FBI guy gets there and is talking about, he knew right away that her and the dad, John and Nina, knew right away. And he's like, do you think that clouds your judgment? So that was another thing that kind of made me think poorly of John, because I was like, did he know, I could get in trouble for this?
Well, he knew for sure.
But he got close to her because
now... you think they were different in his intentions?
Well, because now it makes me question it, who knows, but maybe he did really end up falling for her.
Sure.
But now he's lucky she's not turning him in because they do have that history. And if that wasn't there, I'm sure she would turn him in, you know?
Or maybe she will. Who knows what's happening with the show.
She might turn him in still.
But I love the scene with the FBI guy and Nina when she's sitting there behind the desk in the beginning, and he basically is like, hey, like, no, just because I'm the FBI, you're going to still work on this case.
Yeah.
And she was just like, so like, eyes lit, like, wait, really? I can still be a part of it?
That was so great.
It's a dream. It was just a touching kind of moment and scene, but then he obviously was like, no, but it's still my case, honey, but I'm just going to, bring you along for the ride.
Yeah, obviously, Nina wasn't going anywhere, but they kind of made you think for a second that she might get pushed to the side a bunch.
Scene.
So
I think we saw the beginning of Nina and John's love affair tonight, though. Whenever it's the scene where he asks her, they're like sitting in the rain or something on a stoop. How dramatic!
Classic.
And classic. And he's telling her. Like, how can anyone imagine or even think that I would do this? My own wife thinks it. You don't think it, do you? And he's like crying, and then she lovingly puts her hand on his, and I'm like, and that's where
it all started, because there was a fall in the marriage, sort of, and I don't know, but did she take advantage too, or is she just to get ahead for the case? Did she take a little advantage?
I think it's just inappropriate in general.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously you can't help how you feel, but.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
I think that scene actually made me think that it was genuine, only because it's like, I don't think she would have done that in that specific instance unless she wasn't really feeling it, I guess. But at the same time, it's kind of tough to tell. But I don't know. That's what I think the beginning of it is. But so this new FBI guy has a ton of ideas and has kind of the best one yet. He wants to take Adam back to this bunker because whenever the pockmarked man, I'm just going to keep calling him the creepy guy.
Creepy man is so much easier.
Whenever he blew up the bunker, it of course erased all forensic evidence, so any DNA that they possibly could have gotten from it, not happening now. So he suggests that they take Adam back to the bunker, and of course Claire is not having it and thinks, but she's even like, oh, we should wait a week. Now we all know that they have this big interview set up with the entire family about how they're doing and that kind of stuff, so it seems like maybe she's putting off him doing it for a week for that. But Adam actually jumps in and says, no, I want to do it. Like, let's go back. And then we see them go back, and he says that he is in that. Well, first of all, Claire can't be a part of it. She's just like too traumatized by it. So when Adam goes in, we see him say like, oh, here's where I slept, and then here is the bathroom, and here's the kitchen and the dining room where, you know, we had like nice meals at. And I thought it was kind of weird, and this is just one of those other suspicions that's gonna stick in my head for a while, because later back at the house, whenever John is telling Claire how it went, he says he had the layout just like our house. Even as an 8-year-old kid, he remembered the layout. And I'm like, no. That, like, an 8-year-old kid is not like, let me set up this exactly how, I mean, maybe, but it just seemed a little strange to me.
With that, too, my mind went to the confrontations with the brother about him not remembering things, because I'm like, if he did remember the layout of this house, he really couldn't remember his best friend from the time.
Right. Oh, that's a good point.
Because if he set up the kid, you know, like that just was what my mind went to.
Well, I was thinking that he at home studied obviously what the house looks like, then he got in there and then he acted and played it out and stuff. And also, it's like, I feel like he's only been home for a short amount of time. And the fact that he's very, very comfortable and adamant about going back, I mean, we obviously find that he wanted to get a key.
Right.
So that's why he wanted to be alone, some random key from a random brick. But at the same time, like, that doesn't raise any kind of red flags, you know, that like he's so like into going back to this place he was tortured at. But I mean, also, it could be, I don't know what's going on in his head, but that's his home for the past 10 years.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, 100%, it's more weird than it is not weird.
Yeah.
Like, you would think that someone would never, ever, ever want to go back there. Yeah. But I think, just like you said, I think he went with the intentions of, oh, let me get this secret key. What is this key?
Well, the fact that they even left him alone, I was very surprised. Like, it was a crime scene there,
like
basically.
Like a detective should be in the corner, like, watching him or something.
Exactly. Like, because the thing is, it was weird.
Too, is they're freaking out because they don't have like any evidence of any sort, and then he asked for a moment alone and then goes right to the key as if he didn't want them to know that there was anything left in there.
Well, that's exactly what it is. Yeah,
it's so weird to me, and that's why I don't know what the key is, but it's weird that he doesn't want them to know about it.
But it's also like in this show, like with the fact that they had all these FBI agents down there, all these cops, and you couldn't find a loose brick in the wall.
Yeah, right.
And it's the same thing at Hank's house when they had searched it 10 years ago, and he comes back 10 years later and Adam's gloves are in the ceiling. Like,
right.
How thorough of a search are you guys doing here? You can easily just move a little thing. Like, come on.
It seems like you should dig in every single place and maybe like bang on. I mean, that's like Cop 101, right?
I feel like we've all watched enough cop shows. We know what to do.
Then
tap, 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 tap until you find a hollow place.
And then we may not have a show though, so I
guess.
gotta have some.
Or basically, we're all just detectives.
Yeah, we're qualified to discuss this.
But so that's really the only thing that comes from that is that we find this little key, not little key, I guess it's going to be a big key. Yeah. But later back at the house, John is telling Claire about how, like everything that happened, and she seems for the first time to kind of be breaking down a little bit. Like,
very emotional this entire episode.
She is approached by Willa at one point, and is, they're talking about this interview that's going to happen, and she's like, how can I even slightly say that I'm fine? Like, of course we're not fine. Mm-hmm. And even they're meeting with some kind of like booster, I don't know what you would call it, someone who's endorsing her, and they're talking about this interview and like what she should wear and all that politician jazz, I guess. And she even then seems to not be able to really hold it together. Now, my question for y'all is, do you think that that's fake? And do you think that kind of what ended up going down in the interview was planned by her the entire time? Or do you think that that was like real emotion before the interview was happening?
All planned.
You think so?
100%. I wrote that down. I'm like, she did this on purpose.
Yeah.
I think from that meeting with the endorsing whatever the lady was.
Sure.
I think even from then she had this little plan, because then her daughter, Willa, would be confused. I don't know. I think it's all planned, and if you notice when she walked out of the kitchen after Willa was like, you have to tell me about these things.
Yeah.
She's like, you think this was a plan? And then they zoom in on Claire's face, and she kind of had this little smirk, like
she had the smile.
That's what I thought she was acting in the interview, but that little smirk just verified that for me, that she had a drawn out plan.
Well, it also ties in when we see at the end the reporter, what's her name? Why am I? Bridie. When we see Bridie's notes at the end of the episode, basically saying like, is like Claire like does she have the DNA center in her pocket? Because throughout the interview, she's talking about wanting to put a chip, which I think is like kind of like an interesting idea to put a microchip, but to put inside humans, like regardless, that's a little bit too much government involvement in the individual's life. I will throw that one out there. But I mean, interesting thought. But the fact that was tied into that lab, and that's where they're producing these. And so right at the end, when they end the episode like that, I'm like, gosh, maybe this is planned. Maybe she does know what she's doing for whatever reason.
Yeah. I wrote it somewhere in my notes. I was like, politician.
Yes.
Because, I mean, kind of the ultimate move to make people think that you're being real is to not include your people around you into, like, what's really going on in your mind so that they can seem legitimately, like, okay, I guess.
True emotion from them,
and not like, oh yeah, because if Willa had known, she wouldn't have looked so. Of course, it's going to be shocking to her that her mom's kind of going off the walls a little bit. So you would say, and being like, no, yes, of course, I'm not okay. Because if she was sitting there like, I mean, that's not going to seem as legitimate. And I don't know. I just think that. Well, I think now the smirk at the end, we definitely see like, oh, okay, there's something up with this, but. It just makes me have even more suspicions about Claire with all of the lab stuff, because now that we know, okay, so she does have the she doesn't have the DNA result.
She does dental records. We find out.
So we find out that Willa actually did go pick up the dental records for her mother. Which last time when we spoke, we all thought that maybe it was someone else, someone pretending to be. All our theories were happening, but to find out it was actually them, but it wasn't for her. She wanted it for her mother.
But do y'all believe Willa seemed to be like, oh yeah, mom wanted them. I actually believed that she really picked them up because her mom wanted them, not for like another
same.
suspicion.
I think so too.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's another suspicion, but I think the fact that it's for her mother and not that like Willa picked them up because Willa, I mean, obviously it would be for her mother, or she needed it to bring to the dentist herself, but the fact that it was specifically asked by Claire is kind of the
And now with
mark.
like the DNA in the lab that she's working with, it just all kind of ties together, I think.
Yeah, and the only thing about the whole Claire suspicion for me is the fact that when we see her when she's by herself, we do see her being emotional. And we see her not being emotional in front of like other people mainly. Not mainly, but in a few instances. So I feel like if it was fake or her not thinking that was Adam was her son, etc., she wouldn't be having these emotions by herself, crying or hugging him in the middle of the night and all of that. So that's why it's a little funky to me.
But something's clearly got to be up with it, though, right?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Something's up. But.
Okay, so at this point we know that she has, or most likely has, the lab in her pocket because she's doing this big endorsement for the microchip thing. And a funny thing about the microchip thing is this: people have like suggested that in real life, like to microchip people. And I always think, I'm like, but what about the people who are convicted who are actually innocent? Like, what would you do then? Like, they're just going to be microchipped for the rest of their lives? Anyway, that's a little side note. But I just think that with the whole interview, I'm surprised that everyone kind of kept it together as well as they did, especially with Danny.
Yeah.
I forget what they asked him, like, well, what is it like now with your brother or something like that?
Yeah.
And he's like, it's like he never left.
Good boy, Danny.
Yeah,
and
Danny,
Claire just looks at him and smiles.
He followed the rules. I thought Adam was so bizarre in that.
Adam's always bizarre, though.
Yeah.
Adam's a creep.
But in this episode, he seemed way more comfortable at the beginning, and then in the interview, he literally just
He's cringing.
like cringing and sitting very uncomfortably.
But I think that could also be him playing a role like, okay, I know, like, I can't just be this, like, oh, hey, mom and dad, everything's
Yeah, that's
great.
true.
I have to, I mean, it's almost like he knows, like, I need to play this part of a wounded child. Not that he isn't wounded, of course he is, if he was actually kept in a bunker for 10 years. But I think he was almost playing a role just like Claire was, and just kind of like Danny was, too. But kind of tying Danny in with our girl Bridie again.
Yeah.
I am actually so surprised that they went there this early.
I wrote that down.
They went, so he shows up at Bridie's house and they hook up. They're in a tub, whatever, and he gets out
Shaving your legs.
Yeah,
Casual.
I've never had a guy shave my legs.
Yeah.
But, interesting.
Very.
But he gets out because his phone rings and he thinks it might be his brother, and he discovers all of her stuff about the case. I was like, you're going there already? That could be a huge plot thing throughout the entire show. But I'm also kind of like, okay, I'm glad you went there and made us find it out so that we don't have to keep up with that storyline.
With that being said, though, I do think they had it found out because now it's a whole different storyline because you see him going there at the end because he seems just sick of his family, kind of just
he needs an ally.
Yeah. So, because I was very surprised. I was like, they're going to have him find out already? Because we were all saying, this is going to build up and all this. But now you kind of see he's like, hey, now I know she can help me in whatever he's doing, but, they're going to work together now.
Exactly.
I assume.
He needed someone else, I think. And, I mean, it's episode 3 now. And so you need someone on your side sort of to be, little two detectives together, you know, trying to figure it out. And no one in his family is listening. No one's, questioning anything about Adam. So, of course, he's going to, stick with her because he really wants to know the truth. He's my favorite. I just love him.
He's my favorite, too.
When he had his confrontation with Willa, too, about the dental records, I'm all about the looks. I could be misreading these people's looks very much, but to me...
I thought you were meant he's hot. I was
he's very cute, too, but...
Very cute.
I look at their faces, and to me, when Willa said, for Mom, he kind of got suspicious in a way.
Yeah.
To me, I don't think he bought, the doctor needed them. So I think that kind of, in turn, and poor Willa pretty much blaming him for Adam being kidnapped.
Yeah.
That was kind of sad, too, but I think that kind of led him, he's like, why did they want these? And then...
Yeah. Well, I definitely don't think he bought the thing about the doctor needing them.
Yeah.
Because, why would the doctor need his dental records? Obviously. I mean, I know that dental records do, of course, contain DNA, but why would, his normal doctor? So I think maybe Claire actually did say, oh, the doctor needs this, but I think, and Willa just kind of went along with it, but I don't think Danny clearly is buying that that's the reason.
Yeah.
Well, because he asked, too, he goes, does he have an appointment set up soon? And she's like, how am I supposed to know? And that'd be the only reason why you would need one, is, like, the records if you're going to the dentist soon.
Exactly.
So you can bring it with you. Or
I did feel bad that she kind of blamed everything on him, though, but I think it's almost her way of, I mean, because as far as we have seen so far, Danny hasn't had any involvement in the kind of putting everything on Hank. So I think her lashing out at Danny now, I mean, they've clearly never really gotten along, especially since that. So I think that's just her way of kind of lashing out and, I don't know, getting the guilt off of herself, maybe.
Well, I can see that.
typical Willa, though.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
very
just
typical.
like, it seems like in her character that's just her. That's what she does.
Basically.
Miss Willa.
So the whole time all of this is happening, they're also, they're still doing the search around the oil refinery, because now we know that the bunker is where he indeed was kept, so he says. And
So many, you could use that. So
I know,
many
right?
times.
And he makes a point in the thing, or whenever they're down there, he says that he brought him food, and it was a good night because it was warm. So this puts it in Nina's mind that, like, oh, this is, miles away from the road. Maybe he drove here. So they do indeed end up finding some tire tracks, and it's from a Dodge Ram of certain years or whatever. And they start interviewing everyone who owns that kind of truck that works at the oil refinery. And I forget if they showed it. Like, how did the creepy man know that they were looking into this? Did they see him, or did he see them asking someone about it?
No.
We weren't ever shown that, and I had the same question.
Part of my new theory, you guys. I'm telling you. It is. I have it.
I'm excited to hear it. I mean, no, we had no idea, but I'm sure you just saw the cop cars pulling up with their sirens on, the lights on. So,
right, and like the 2 or 3 random people, whoever it was.
that they went to. So maybe he was on the list, or maybe he just, I mean, if he's a smart kidnapper, he got away for 10 years kind of holding this boy, we should use these again.
Yeah.
Holding Adam, like he kind of knows what he's doing. Like he didn't give burgers with wrappers on them, so he would never know where it's coming from, etc. So maybe it was just part of his whole plan this entire time.
Yeah, I think it was.
To get rid of the car and just.
Well, and we know that he's been watching them search, obviously, because
So I
he
think
saw
he knows
Nina
what's
searching. So
going
maybe
on.
he just kind of got wind of it, and that's how.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised to find out, has maybe a wife, maybe a girlfriend, a pregnant girlfriend.
Yeah.
And that's how his excuse for getting rid of the truck is getting her a new
minivan.
I know.
Also, it was a classic moment when he's walking in super creepy, and it was right after John was like, before he hurt, or someone mentioned
Before
him
he hurt
hurting
someone else,
and they
yeah.
play like the creepiest music, and he's walking super slow into the house, which was like, why are you walking so slow?
As she's chopping and hear the chopping sound.
Yeah, but I mean, at that point, I assumed, okay, he knows this, but the way they made it sound like creepy, you're like,
Oh, yeah. Like he's about to kill this pregnant
For me,
woman.
I was like, oh my God, girl, you did not lock your door. Rule 1, when you're home alone, you lock your door no matter what. Like, come on. Don't have your music on chopping veggies without your door locked.
No,
But
I'm a freak, so I would never.
Same.
No,
yeah.
I don't know. But so he, I guess, I don't know if he just dropped his car off at an impound lot or what. He said he sold it, but or I think he said he sold it, but we see his car get smashed by the whatever thing at the impound lot. So clearly that's one thing that they're never going to find. And even the FBI detective and Nina have a conversation about, he's like, this wasn't the move, but we'll get there. And she's like, he's a person. That's what makes this so different from, that's why I need to have empathy in this sort of case, because a person makes mistakes and he'll eventually mess up.
Yeah, that
but
was
it
great.
seems like he's not messing up so far.
To me, too, though, with the impounding, it's kind of weird they wouldn't think to maybe check that. Because you kind of get in the mind of the other person. At this point, they assume that the person knows they're looking for him.
Well, clearly he burned the thing up.
Yeah, so to me, I'm a little surprised they wouldn't even go and check someone, obviously.
That's
like,
why
it's
we should
part
be
of
the
it.
detectives.
Yeah.
I'm telling
That's
you.
why I should have been on this case. But, you know what I mean? Because you're like, you would think, hey, maybe he's probably trying to make sure
Get rid
you
of the
don't
car.
find this car.
Right.
So, but that's just part of it.
That's why we should be detectives.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now. I kind of been forgetting about our boy Hank
Yes.
throughout the whole episode, and this is just kind of
Weird.
This is one of the weirdest parts to me. Like, so Hank is buying a puppy. And he goes to this little puppy shop, and we see him lay down in the pen of puppies. I think we kind of touched on this earlier, like right as they show Adam laying down in the bunker in this like position that he always slept in, and Hank is kind of in the same thing. So Hank's only thing throughout the episode is him buying a puppy, which, that's very sweet. They're really cute little labs.
And he didn't get it.
Well, he might have
I'm glad he didn't get it. You're always so pro Hank. I just can't handle this.
He looked so happy in that pen of puppies. Like,
he did.
He did, but I think the creepiest part, what just led me to have the puppy whole thing be weird from the get-go, was when he's at the door and he's watching the kids play with the puppy, and then he turns around and is like, oh, I want a puppy. And it's like,
oh, yeah, that was kind of...
All right, well, why do you want the puppy? Yeah, and so that whole time I couldn't enjoy looking at the puppies. I was like, can you leave this house? Don't get a puppy. Don't get a puppy.
Yeah, that was weird.
So that's weird.
I did... The only reason I felt kind of bad for him was in the end, whenever he... Like, the kids are watching the news, and there's Hank's face, and, you know, they're watching the sit-down interview, and Claire's like, he is not an innocent man, and he did all this stuff, and the kids are like, Mom, that's the guy on the news. And I felt bad for him in the instance of, because, like, in this specific situation, not to say he hadn't done some other creepy stuff, clearly he has, but he didn't kill Adam. Well, if Adam is who he says he is. But is he gonna, like, have to deal with people doing this for the rest of your life? Like, that's so many things, and I think I've just been watching too much Making a Murderer. But it's like, if you, like, once you're accused of a crime, you're automatically basically guilty for the rest of your life, whether you did it or not. So it's like he's having to deal with all of these people judging him and kind of being shunned for something that he didn't necessarily even do.
I think the point of when the kids freak out, they show it while they're talking about him being a sex offender.
Right.
So that's why I think the mom and, like, the kids kind of, like, freaked out, which is, like, sad, but, I mean,
He wasn't able to get his puppy.
Yeah.
But there was a scene, too, where John's taking out the trash, and Hank sees him. Hank just kind of stares at him.
I think he knows.
And he has to know something, you know what I mean? And something weird's gonna happen with that. Every time you ever see the two of them in a scene,
weird.
It's very creepy, and it's very dark, and, like, not dark as in lighting, but I mean, tonight it was. It's just a very dark scene.
Yeah.
And my heart races a little. I'm like, oh my God, like, John's gonna die, or I don't know what Hank's gonna do.
Because they've shown a couple times, like, interactions between them, but they're not real interactions. It's just
him watching.
silence. Yeah. They've done that a couple times. I think
very hostile.
Because we know obviously that Willa and John were both in it, but we never established, like, how did Hank not see someone?
Yeah.
And I 100% think he knows.
Well, whenever another really good scene was whenever the cops did get called because of the screaming in the house that now we know John called. Whenever Nina walks in, Hank, like, he sees that his door has been opened a little bit, and he opens it, and it's holding the ship in a bottle thing, and he's just bawling, crying, because he knows right there. He's like, clearly, I know. There's no way I'm getting out of this now.
You have to admit that was sad.
That was sad,
because he just knew, and he knew he could do nothing about it.
But I was thinking, like, why are you picking that up? Your fingerprints, like, are going to be all over that now. If you had never touched that before in your life, that salvo,
that's true.
Leave it in the drawer.
But I guess you also, if you're innocent, you think, I have no, like, what is this doing here? I have no reason not to. But, well, clearly he didn't think he was innocent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been crying like that. But I don't know. I think he clearly knows someone framed him. So who else would have access to that besides John and Willa and Danny and Claire? Like, so I think he knows that one of them is the person that framed him. I don't necessarily know if he has, like, it's this person 100%, but of course the first person he would think would be John, because he's the patriarch, he's the dad, he's the one who's gonna do that if it's gonna happen. So I don't know. I think he has some sneaking suspicions, but
and Claire knows nothing, right, about the
framing
of them framing, right? No one else. It's just the two of them that have kept that this whole time.
Yeah.
All right.
Or I'm sure someone else knows. Well, no, Nina.
Yeah.
Oh, Nina knows.
I don't know. And I think maybe now that's why, I think that's maybe why Willa, if we look back to, I think, last episode 2, when she confronts John, is like, hey, like, we need you to be sort of a part of this campaign type deal, or I'm going to basically expose the affair, et cetera, et cetera. I think her little hostile attitude about that is maybe because she tried to protect him when she was 13, and he's still like kind of going off the rails and off the tracks, and so maybe that's why they're not as close, or I don't know. She always has this sort of, I don't know, disdain from him. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. That's
I'm wondering
else.
too if Nina knows that Willa had anything to do with it. They didn't really touch on that. They know that she found out that John made the call, but they didn't. Besides that, they didn't get into it, so I don't know if that will even be an issue or come up.
Yeah.
But
she's gonna search more now. Now that the FBI agent was like, "Hey, you just stopped after he confessed. It was just that was nothing."
Yeah.
The 911 call. That's like, how did she
voice,
listen to it?
I guess in that moment, the operator.
How did she listen to it?
It clearly sounded just like him, and even if they weren't
I think he'd have, like, a
romantically
fake
involved,
voice.
well, exactly. Like if you're gonna
deep,
do that,
deep voice.
yeah, right. You're screaming. I mean, that's criminal 101.
Yeah, obviously.
I don't know, but
Teach John how to be a criminal.
the kids are up to some creepy stuff in the end of the episode. I would say Danny's isn't creepy. He shows that he's joining forces with Bridie, but we see Willa in the bathroom, like I guess getting ready to take a shower, and look who's in the mirror. Her brother Adam, just staring at her, and she's like, "Oh, what?" And they have this little moment where he's just kind of sitting on his bed holding this mysterious key in his hand, and she's like, "It's okay. It's like you didn't know, whatever, but you can't look at me that way. I'm your sister."
Yeah.
I'm your sister.
She makes sure to like drill that into him that like, hey, boy,
don't look at me
you're
like that.
my little brother. I just feel like tonight I'm gonna look in my mirror and I'm just gonna like be terrified that he's gonna be. That was just a very creepy. He's just he's a great actor because he plays that just stoic look, that stoic face so well. Oh, God, it gives me goosebumps.
He's just the one that I can't figure out yet.
I can't at all.
Because even then, whenever she's like, "I'm your sister," he's like, "I know."
To me,
do you know?
I wrote this down, like, when she said, "I'm your sister," I'm another look. But to me, I was like, who is she trying to convince? You know, it almost seemed as if they had this, like
they were in it together.
Like, to me, it was like, I know you're not my brother. I know you're not my sister. But they like said the opposite,
right?
Knowing that's what I thought.
I kind of thought the same thing too, where I got that vibe a little bit, where it was like, okay, let's repeat this to ourselves to remind us how we have to act toward one another.
Oh wow, that's
you didn't
crazy.
think that?
No, I didn't. think
that's
that
where
at all.
my mind went right away. I'm like, it's like.
I thought maybe for him, in a sense, him being like, well, you're not my sister anyway, and like I wanted to check you out, but not from her end of it.
Oh yeah, I thought that.
That's a new way to think of him.
I definitely thought of that thought going through his mind too, though. Like, you're not actually my sister, so I can check you out, but crap, you caught me. So.
Yeah, you caught me. All right, I'll pretend now. Sorry. But then he just sits there again with that key.
Yeah, that's
like, what does that key have to go to? And then my whole, like, I don't think I really touched upon this. When he found that key, you think it was like planted there for him, or do you think it had been in there that entire time?
I don't know about that.
Do you think that the creepy face man put it in there before he burned everything up, knowing that they would probably bring him in there, etc.? That's a very elaborate plan if that was the case. But
I kind of thought that it was left for him because I mean, like, what clearly he had no need for a mysterious secret key while he was down there for 10 years.
Yeah.
And also, like, how did he chisel away a brick? I mean, I'm sure you can find some creative ways to do that when you're down there for 10 years.
That's true. Didn't think about the brick.
It seemed like it was planted to me. I don't know, though.
Unless first when I saw that key, it made me think, like, did he have a key to get out of the bunker this whole time? Was he escaping this whole time and coming back? But then I was like, would there be a lock on the inside? It would be on the outside, not like right at the stairs. So I don't know. That's where my mind kind of went too, but who knows?
I don't know. Okay, let's get into some predictions.
Yeah.
I got my theory.
I'm excited to hear you.
Your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
I'm going to let you go first because I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my
We're excited. Let's hear
big
it.
thought out theory. Just came to me and I had to write it all down. Okay. So I think that Claire and Willa are behind it. I think that they are actually helping the creepy guy. I think they hired that guy to kind of do all this stuff, and they're kind of keeping him up to date on like the car, like they know what's going on in the investigation, because like when they talk about tire marks, Claire and John were both there. So that could have been another thing to, oh, you need to get rid of the car now. And so I don't think that creepy guy actually did anything. I think he's just helping the people who did it. But I think 100% right now, I think that Claire and Willa had this whole thing patched up, because now definitely with the DNA test and the chips and stuff, you see they had this planned out for the campaign, and him coming back is perfect time to be like, we should chip these people. And so I think John is out. I don't think he has any relevance to it at this point. I don't think he's involved. I think they had their little moment today where they, made you question him a little. Yeah. But I think that's what's happening.
Wow.
I really like that. The
that's
only
a great
thing that which this is probably going to be the biggest question in my mind with every theory, and it is with my own theories, is like, why would they, in a sense, sacrifice Adam? Like, clearly he was a real child. He wasn't, they had a son named Adam. So why would they like sacrifice, or did they have someone kill him? Have they just been hiding him for this long? That's where is my only question when it comes to one of the family members being involved.
Unless they already know that he's dead. They actually have evidence and proof that actually died, but for whatever reason decided to cover it up and go on this path instead of actually burying him and going through that whole process. Who knows?
And I also think Bridie and Danny now are gonna form a genuine connection, and I think that they're gonna, I don't know if romantically, but I think that they're gonna become super close.
They're gonna be a great team, and I think that they're gonna find stuff, and it's gonna be possibly your theory against Willa and Claire. Well, especially Claire, and that's just gonna, I don't know, cause craziness to happen. And then I think it's also gonna be found out that Willa and John, why is Willa involved in everything? Willa and John, the plan, that's gonna come out very, very soon. And then when we saw the previews for next week, I think a weird thing that I saw in there was when Adam was looking at the iPad and he saw the creepy man. He saw his captor on there. He dropped the iPad because he couldn't look at him. But if he's having that reaction towards seeing his captor, but yet he was so into wanting to go back to the bunker, right? It didn't kind of make sense to me. You know what I mean? I felt like he had too much emotion seeing him and not enough emotion about the bunker when they should correlate the level.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I kind of was weird. So I don't know.
That definitely is weird. I don't know. I can't. My theories, I guess, are essentially the same as they were last week. But I have no idea if he's actually the real Adam. I kind of am leaning toward no, sure. But my biggest question right now anyway is, how is Hank involved in all of this? Clearly they're not just going to keep him as a character that just, sure, it's important to know that he was the one who was convicted of this, wrongful death or whatever you call it, but he has some other involvement, or it seems like he has some other involvement in this situation in some way.
I think that Hank, because we mentioned at the beginning of this that Danny seemed to be the only one who didn't jump on the Hank bandwagon when they were trying to find someone. So I can see Hank somehow getting involved in the takedown of whoever's doing this. Maybe Danny and Bridie will look more into the Hank situation, find out that, oh my gosh, my sister and my dad are the ones who set this guy up, then have more questions for Hank, and then he could be part of helping them.
Yeah. But Hank, he's still, for sure, creepy McCreepsterson.
Yeah, Danny's gloves or hair or whatever in the ceiling.
Still don't know about that.
You're going to pet it and sit there and
I think that's maybe him feeding his desires.
Yeah,
that sounded really weird. But you know what I mean?
Well, Hank, you got to stop feeding that,
right? I've never, he has those tendencies in his head, but he's like, I don't act on them. So maybe he just, it's creepy regardless, but that could be it. It's just kind of his way of...
I don't know. If we can kind of just stop with the creepy Hank scenes, though, where he's just there. And same with Adam,
We'll be good.
Yeah.
Goodness. Well, thank y'all so much for watching with us tonight. Can't wait for next week. We're going to get a lot more information. As always, you can find us all at AfterBuzz TV. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment. We definitely want to hear what you have to say. I'm April Whisenhant. You can find me everywhere at April Whisenhant.
And in regards to comments, this is not based on that documentary. I tweeted at the family writers, and they said that the writers never seen it, so that's it. I'm Abby Vega. You can find me on Instagram _Abby Vega and on Twitter at AVega5.
And I'm Nadine Della Pelle, and you can find me everywhere at Nadine DP and the number 3.
See y'all next week.
All right, bye, guys.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.